What wedding moment made you think, they are not going to last long? When she went alone on her honeymoon, because she booked a trip to the Caribbean despite her newlywed husband having a severe sun allergy. Because this kinda blew up and I saw some mean comments about her. She was a good friend and they had been together for some years. They married young and it didn't occur to them that it would be strange if she went on the honeymoon and he stayed behind. He was a good guy and just wanted to see her happy, and she really wanted to go on this vacation, because she had never left the country. They separated half a year after the wedding, and my friend, the bride, told me that the marriage had been a way to prolong the relationship despite both of them knowing that it was already over some time before they got married. Kinda like a couple gets a baby to save a marriage. It really was just sad because they were a nice couple, but they stayed friends after separating. And I can guarantee that she didn't cheated on him while away, they were both really loyal. About his sun allergy, he had red hair, a really fair skin and burned up within minutes. And I mean really bad sunburn, the kind you have to go to the hospital for. He always had to wear sunglasses, long-armed shirts and a hat, even on cloudy days, so the vacation was not for him. That's a sick burn. Groom got into a fistfight with the father of the bride. Split after 4 months. Context: groom and bride's dad. Actually, most people in these families, if I'm honest, have pretty aggressive drinking problems. Father-in-law has always hated him. I wasn't around for what actually set it off, but it ended when the bride got in the middle, got an elbow in the eye, and the happy couple left for the night. This was in rural Canada. Not Letterkenny, but basically Letterkenny. I'd say the father-in-law won the fight though. That's one long fight. The entire bridal party, including parents of the wedded couple, entering into a betting pool of how long the marriage would last, at the wedding reception. IIRC: the best man won, Price is Right rules, at 14 months. I was the best man at a wedding a few years back. At the rehearsal dinner, his future in-laws were treating him like crap. They were bossing him around, making him do crap, and talking down to him. They didn't let him hang out with his groomsmen afterwards while the bride went out and got drunk. They are now divorced. Edit to add a little detail. Yes, he should have stood up for himself. His ex's parents were making him do crap for the wedding the next day and he was too nice to say no. For you youngsters out there, this is cliché, but you really do marry the family and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, a lot of the times. When the maid of honor professed her love for my brother during her toast at my brother's wedding, and her husband walked up to the head table, picked her up and carried her away before she could embarrass him further. They lasted about 3 months after that. My brother and his wife, on the other hand, are still happily married 20 years later. The groom took the stupid cake thing to an extreme. The bride had given him his bite, and mushed a little on his chin or nose. He then took a piece and mashed it into her face so hard that I was expecting her to end up with a bloody nose. Cake and frosting got up her nose, in her eyes, down the front of her dress, etc. The bride had to go get cleaned up, had her makeup redone, and was ugly, crying within an hour of saying, "I do." He didn't give a fuck. The woman who made my wedding cake is a friend of the family, and when she was doing the consult with us, she told us that one condition that she had was that we had to have a conversation about serving each other cake. We could do whatever we wanted, we could not do it. We could serve each other nicely. We could dab it on our noses. We could do a faceplant in the cake. It was our cake. But we had to agree on it together beforehand. We just cut the cake together but didn't serve it to each other. Apparently she had seen more than one marriage that got off to a rocky start because the couple was not on the same page about cake, and it was very important to her that her cake would not be a source of conflict in our marriage. His third wedding. Same venue and same after ceremony driving away vehicle as the first two. I was at the wedding of one of my mum's oldest friends and she clearly had more fun dancing with the best man after the wedding. Long story short, they dated for a while after the divorce. The groom and best man had a dancing routine for getting into the church ceremony and they got nearly halfway through it, and I guess the groom felt they hadn't received much applause and wows from us, the attendees, and decided to go back to the entrance and start all over. Sigh. Why is no one having a good time? I specifically requested it. When the groom started off his speech by saying, "We all know I didn't want to get married, but we're here for bride and child we had together _" 1 year, 3 months later they were finished. The groom had a best woman instead of a best man. Nothing wrong with that, but her toast left the whole room in awkward silence because she was clearly in love with him. Had an old boss who was divorced. He told me once I should have known it wasn't going to last when the only happy moment I had on my wedding day was when I snuck out to smoke weed with my buddies in the parking lot. 2 friends of mine got married, and when they gave their vows, the guy started laughing at the part about being faithful. Oops. When they disappeared for half an hour during the reception. They were both saving themselves for marriage, and were desperate to bone down. Which is a fine thing to want. But it turns out that was more or less the main reason they got married. They made it almost a year. The bride told her bridesmaids that she didn't actually want to get married. Multiple times. No one told the groom until after the divorce. I was kindly included in a last-minute +1 to the wedding of a family friend who I'd never met before. At the rehearsal dinner, or the German equivalent, the Polterabend, the guests smashed ceramic and porcelain items on the ground. I was fresh in Germany, so this was all pretty out of context and frightening. But my boyfriend explained that it's a tradition reminding the couple that life is sometimes difficult and you have to work together to clean it up. The bride kind of half-heartedly motioned to the groom to sweep it up. He did a little bit, then just moved on to talk to his friends, leaving most of the shards strewn around the yard. Additionally, I don't think I saw the couple talk to each other once over the next 3 days of celebrations. It was a gorgeous wedding, and I'm so grateful that I was invited. Really good way to begin living in a new country. But it wasn't surprising to hear that they divorced a few years later. I was at a wedding when a phone went off during the ceremony. In the middle of exchanging vows. It was the groom's. He took the call. They are divorced now. Edit to add. I believe it was a cousin calling, to ask if they were late for the wedding. Wedding photographer here, I can think of a few. Full-blown row during dinner, had another couple fistfight during a first dance. An infamous one for me was leaving a venue late one night, and as I'm walking to the train I can see the bride down an alley, on her knees with the best man. I was the wedding photographer for a reality TV show. End of the night I'm having a few drinks with the film crew and the groom has come up to me and one of the producers and says, "I think I've made a big mistake." So we're trying to be reassuring and telling him it's natural to second-guess such a big decision, to which he replies, "No, I mean I think I am gay." I had them both on Facebook. The drama the next week was mesmerizing to watch unfold. I've got a ton of these stories edit since you asked. Was working with a video guy who had the bride and groom on radio mics. Sat around waiting for the evening action to kick off and the video dude called me over and said, "Listen to this." Groom was talking to one of the bridesmaids about how they had to end their affair now he's married, not a how. Could you tell they wouldn't last, but shooting in an old church on the hottest day of the year. Watching the groom wait for the bride and he's swaying back and forth. Next thing he's fainted, fallen forward and slammed his mouth into a stone step. Smashed his front teeth out. Blood everywhere. Had a bride and groom on a trampoline for photos. Groom's heading downward. Bride's about to go up. He lands on her dress just as she goes up and she pops out the top of the dress, boobs flailing around in the air. Shot a traveler wedding which erupted into a massive brawl. Watched a drunk usher knock over a wedding cake. Weddings are amazing. I've been doing this for about 12 years and seen some sights, but I still love shooting them even now. When he smashed the cake in her face and hair, then went off drinking with his buddies. In 12 weeks, she filed. Good thing I didn't buy an expensive gift. He complained she was mean to him throughout their dating life. The day before the wedding all of the groomsmen and the groom's friends told him not to marry the girl. Like straight up. They lasted less than a year. The part of the vows where you pledge monogamy? The audience laughed. The most beautiful wedding I've been to ended in divorce. Venue was where the groom's father is buried and he cried as he made his vows to the bride there. Turned out he'd been cheating on her for months and they divorced a while later. Something so repugnant about marrying someone you're cheating on practically over your father's grave. To date it's the only wedding I've been to that ended in divorce. They got secretly married at the local town hall out of spite to the girl's father who did not agree with the relationship. This happened right out of high school and they divorced during my sophomore year at college. Spite. The foundation of all great marriages. I used to work for an event center that hosted a lot of weddings pre-COVID. After one ceremony I saw the groom slap the butt of one of the bridesmaids in the hallway. She laughed and with a big smile said, "Oh Jeremy, you'll never change." Edit. Thank you so much to the kind people who gave me my first Reddit awards. I chime in with a haven't you people ever heard of closing a goddamn door?
Showed up to the wedding of a friend of my husband's who I knew casually. When we arrived at the church, the groom was very drunk in the parking lot and getting drunker by the minute. I thought it was kinda nuts since it was a full Catholic ceremony which involved lots of kneeling and standing. I honestly have no idea how he made it thought that, but he did. At the reception, he proceeded to continue the drinking party, while his new wife cried in the washroom. When it was time for the first dance he kind of stumbled around the dance floor despite a year of dance lessons. When it was time for him to take his new wife's garter off and throw it to the bachelors, he instead did a strip-tease type dance and got himself down to his underwear in front of many elderly family members. People were shocked and talking, and all in all it was a shit show. I gave this marriage a year or two tops. They, however, are still married 25 plus years later.
A month before the wedding, the couple made an appointment with me, the church music director, organist, to plan music for the ceremony. Each made suggestions on music he or she would like. But no matter how many pieces were considered and demonstrated, they couldn't agree on anything, and would get into heated arguments over processionals, recessionals, vocal solos, and prelude music, even though they were all good possibilities. The bride and groom simply seemed indifferent to one another's wishes and needs. In the end, based on what I heard each of them most wanting, I offered compromises in an effort to bring about piece selections which they finally agreed to. They were engaged, but showed no signs of being in love. I was maid of honor. Me, best man, and the couple went into a separate little room to do the signing stuff. Bride excused herself to go to the bathroom and the groom started making pretty mean remarks about her cooking, she's passionate about, to the officiary. She came back, heard they were talking about cooking family meals together, and gave him the warmest smile, thinking he had praised her. He scoffed awkwardly and changed the topic. That always stuck with me. He wasn't laughing with her but at her, behind her back. They lasted 7 months. The bride and groom did the first dance, then spent the rest of their reception completely apart from each other, getting shit-faced with their own separate friend groups. The only other dancing all night was the bride dancing with her high school friends, the father-daughter dance and the mother-son dance, during which the groom was crying. The best man's speech didn't mention the bride at all and basically boiled down to groom, "You're married now, but our bond is older and stronger. All of our hunting and fishing trips together are the best thing in our lives. Can't wait for more." Such a sad, desperate atmosphere. They made it a little over 1 year. My husband was the best man at a wedding. The bride was a nightmare. Not just during the wedding, but in general everyday life. All of the friends hated her, and she had no friends of her own. We knew it was doomed when, during the portraits, the bride was making everyone miserable as can be. The groom said, exact words, "I'll just send her to therapy. And, if that doesn't work, we can just get divorced." Edit. For emphasis. The ceremony was delayed, because the bride and groom were on the phone with the groom's mother, who refused to come to the wedding, trying to be talked into still going through with it. Apparently they had a huge and physical fight the night before. Their roommate at the time didn't come either. He told me what he saw in the house the night before was enough for him to know this wedding was doomed and they should not be dating, let alone getting married. Edit. In an attempt to answer some of these questions. First, this was about 20 years ago and we are all in our 40s now and have moved on with life since. So, I don't know why the mother wasn't there. I just remember thinking it was weird when I noticed she wasn't, and then later heard they were on the phone with her. The roommate was visibly angry when I went to pick him up for the wedding. Outright refused to come, and I think ended up moving out and basically disappearing after. He was a big dude who worked as a bouncer at clubs, and my impression was he had to go into work mode the night before in his living room and wasn't happy about it. I never heard details and I wouldn't have felt right asking for them. I am still friends, in the sense that I see them every few years, with both the bride and groom. See my comment below for how they turned out. Happy ending considering. I should also add, the years in which they dated and got married, All of us were very heavy binge drinkers. We were in our 20s and worked service industry jobs. It seemed normal almost for this much drama to be around. Looking back, I don't have the same opinions. No one involved ended up in rehab or prison and all live relatively normal lives now. Yes. They stayed married for a couple years, had 2 kids, finally divorced and are now really good friends and great co-parents. But the years they were married were rough. The bachelor party and the bachelorette party were in Vegas at the same time. Across the hall from each other. The bride and groom got in a huge fight on the last night of the trip, and when I was leaving I said I'll see you guys at the wedding to the groom, and he replied I'm not sure there's gonna be one. There was a wedding, but they were divorced within 18 months I believe. One of my friends got married. Afterward she looked at me, crying, and said what did I do? They were separated by the time the plane landed from their honeymoon. He was a good guy, she was a mess. The betta fish in the flower centerpieces lasted longer than the marriage. My wife got invited to a client's daughter's wedding. The couple were both drama students. Many of the bridal party were drama students. The maid of honor's toast consisted of tearful declarations of unrequited love to the groom, along the lines of, "If it couldn't be me, I'm glad it's my best friend that's marrying you." The best man's speech was a lusty declaration of, "If it doesn't work out, call me, babe. Like the previous time you called me." Other toasts were similarly weird. A guy at the table I was seated at was a friend of the bride and said to me that he was this close to standing up during the "speak now or forever hold your peace" thing. I'm still not sure if the whole thing was a bunch of emotionally fucked up 20-year-olds, or one big piece of performance art. My brother's ex-wife. Throughout the exchange of vows, she was looking at everyone but my brother, making sure all eyes were on her. Later, she instructed the photographer, a family friend who was cheap, to mingle and get shots of people being happy. Within 10 minutes, she'd summoned the photographer back shouting, "Whose wedding is this? I meant get shots of people being happy for me." Edit. Thought I'd add they broke up when she cheated on him. Apparently, that marriage she was desperate for was only good while it brought her attention. Wedding videographer here. I think my favorite moment was when I was sitting at the miscellaneous table with all the randoms and the girl next to me. The groom's ex. Drunkenly admitted to sleeping with the groom a few months prior. I was the maid of honor. They seemed like the perfect couple, together for nearly 10 years and had this big, expensive, beautiful wedding. Bride would have been happy with a small event but told me groom had a big family and had insisted. Alarm bells hit when I sat with her parents in the front row and realized the groom-to-bride ratio was so massively off. The groom had 3 best men, as well as ushers etc. His sister and one best man read something during the ceremony, and then all 3 said long speeches about him at dinner. It was all about him. The photographer was even his friend's mum, so she kept whisking away the boys for these hilarious lads shoots. The bride was ignored most of the day, and in the evening he got too drunk, spilt a drink over her wedding gown and danced with his friends. It felt more like a big birthday party than a joint event. I'd never seen that side to him, but I felt so sorry for my friend. It was like she was just there to be a prop to his plans and look good. 3 months after the wedding he began being emotionally abusive. A month after that he admitted he'd been having an affair for years, then left. If I hadn't seen the way he behaved at the wedding, I never would have guessed he had that in him. Edit. As so many people are being kind, I'll update you. My friend hasn't been able to trust or date again yet, and it's been 4 years. However, she has become an amazingly brave woman, who's traveled to some amazing places alone and is now retraining to change careers. I think she learned never to be a backseat passenger in a relationship again. Honestly, the way she handled the whole thing, with such grace and determination, makes me so proud to be her friend. She basically told him when he left that he would never see her, or hear from her, or about her again. She dropped all friends that had a connection with him, after he left, and made sure he would always live his life wondering if he made the right decision and what she was up to. I really hope his dying thought is about her. And I know for a fact hers won't be about him, she'll find real love. My best friend's wedding is tomorrow, and I told her about how I've heard several wedding photographers, videographers say that shoving cake in the face is almost a for sure factor that they're going to divorce. She told me, "Oh yeah, I told him not to, but he probably will anyways, so we'll see how this goes." Update. She put the cake in his mouth respectfully, but he booped her nose 2 or 3 times, which wasn't huge, and they just laughed it off. I cried a couple times during this wedding because their love does seem very genuine. So sorry if this wasn't the update you were hoping for, lol, but I'll give a 1-year update. TLDR. Don't smash without consent. I live for these threads. Anyway, I know a photographer who was offered to shoot a wedding on the Gold Coast, Australia. If you're from Australia, then you know the Gold Coast, while beautiful, has a lot of Jersey Shore types living there. It's kind of like Miami, but no celebrities and very, very trashy. My friend is getting shots of everybody getting dressed up at the same time because the groom, groomsmen, bride and bridesmaids are all getting ready in the same room. The groom decided to have his bucks party, bachelor, stag do, the night before, so they're all hungover over as shit and snorting line after line of coke. Something that is making my photographer friend's job hard because she can't get any nice shots of the groom or groomsmen without these illicit drugs in view. The energy in the room is getting uncomfortable, so the bride asks if they could take it easy on the coke and get a couple of nice photos. The groom yells, "Shut up, cunt," and keeps snorting. The girl who got my friend the gig said they divorced like 4 months later. Another friend of mine was pressured into marrying his girlfriend of like 8 years because she dropped an ultimatum. Propose to me within a year or we're done. He does, so they get married, but of every wedding photo she posted on Facebook, neither one of them looked happy. They divorced barely a year into their marriage. When they got married illegally in high school. 2 16-year-olds from different states who had to lie on their certificate to get approved by the state. It was annulled when the father of the groom found out. I'm a wedding photographer and I have a few of these. When a very young, not dating long couple say things like the partner is perfect and we never fight. When there's name-calling. I particularly cringed at it because we so get each other and are so comfortable that he can call me dumb slut as a nickname. They didn't last the year. One where the wedding was all about the groom promoting his band. He even sang his bride a song that was literally just him showing off his vocal range with some classic piece. She stood up and joined him on stage halfway through and he looked annoyed that he had to share the limelight. They lasted about 2 years, he was sleeping with the other vocalist in the band. At my wedding she paused for a long second before saying yes. The woman marrying us was like, oh she's thinking about it. She laughed it off and said yes. We lasted 3 almost 4 years married. They were both so drunk they were slurring during the vow exchange. This was my sister's best friend and it was a bachelorette party moment. Bride had been having an affair, everyone knew it. The groom's friends tried to tell him, but she convinced him they were making it up. I mean, at that point it was just sad. She actually had the balls to force fiancé to apologize to the guy she was sleeping with for the accusations. The night of the bachelorette party she actually took all her bridesmaids back to the other guy's house and spent the night with him. He came to their wedding. It was sulfur monoxide awkward. Everyone knew and everyone was talking. The groom was told, but chose to overlook it. After the wedding she insisted the other guy come on vacations with her and her husband and included him in all their social functions. Now, if they're non-monogamous, whatever, go crazy. But her husband was an absolute wreck about it for years and she just kept gaslighting him. No one could convince him to leave her. She told my sister that a fair guy insisted he would never marry her and didn't want kids, so she was using fiancé to get them. They ended up divorcing 2 years later after their second child was born. She immediately moved in with a fair guy and they did end up getting married. Edit. I wanted to add a little more context since this comment blew up a bit. Everyone involved in this story was really young, except a fair guy. He had already been married and divorced and had a few kids of his own by then, but he was still well under 30. The original couple had been together since middle school and all this went down between the ages of 21 to 23. I think the husband was just really naive and invested in the relationship. Small town marry your high school sweetheart and live happily ever after bullshit. A fair guy did not go with them on their honeymoon, but he was included in group vacation plans before and after the wedding. Other people in the friend group did start refusing to go if he was involved. The bride had this really twisted power move that husband was not allowed to disrespect or offend a fair guy. Any jealousy or suspicions were his own insecurities, and anyone who said they were sleeping together just didn't understand platonic friendship. A fair guy was just a good friend, her best friend really, and husband needed to get over it. Bride and affair. Guy are still married and the second child is likely actually his. Groom married a girl they went to high school with and seems content. How unbelievably cruel. When he raised his eyebrows and gave her a knowing look during the for richer or for poorer portion of their vows. For context, he was a newly drafted pro athlete and she was a big fan of his signing bonus. YTF, am I reading this the morning of my wedding? Edit for anyone interested. It went great. Other than me losing my ring during pictures. Thank you all for the well wishes, it means a lot to us both. Lots of love for everyone. I worked at a nice restaurant in NOLA. Bride is lovely, she is excited and very receptive to our suggestions on things in their budget. Groom is an insufferable know-it-all. He's bargain hunting. Crab cakes don't cost that much, what if I buy them and you serve them? On their big day I am holding the door as they walk out the first time as husband and wife. We got married, I am so happy. Not really, we gotta fill out paperwork and file it with the state. I've seen 3-week-old balloons less deflated than that poor woman. I hope she got out of there. At my boyfriend's sister's wedding, the groom got drunk before the vows and smoked weed after the vows. Was cross-faded as hell and made a fool of himself. When we went up to congratulate them after, she refused to be near him or take pictures with him. It was awkward. After the speeches basically everyone left. Family was still around and they opened gifts. Someone gifted nice champagne and the groom tried to open it and dropped it and it shattered. Bride stormed off screaming. Groom got upset and started cussing out the air. They still went to their honeymoon together in Florida and she got pregnant almost immediately. Maybe 7 months into her pregnancy she kicked him out because he slept with her roommate. They got divorced when their kid was 6 months old. But it's for the best. The dude is a poss and wasted a lot of their money by being selfish on their day. When the groom ran up and punched the bride during the reception in some kind of drunken melee. I'm witnessing one from the sidelines now. My wife's brother just got married this past May. Bride's mother is a big DIY person and went a little nuts with extra flowers, table pieces, decorations, etc. Note I said extra. It was already decorated by the venue. She just took it upon herself to buy and add way more stuff. Anyway, a few weeks ago she sends my groom's mom, an email with receipts of all the extra stuff she bought, $7,000 worth. And asked that she pay half since it was technically set up in time for the rehearsal dinner for guests to enjoy. It's causing a huge rift between the newlyweds since the bride is taking her mom's side.